to another DorkLair action figure review. Today I'm taking a look at the 6-inch Epic H.A.C.K.S Grim Spectre from Boss Fight Studio. This is my second Epic H.A.C.K.S review. I also reviewed the Barbarian, so you could take a look at that one, and I intend to review the other two figures in this wave. But here we have the Grim Spectre. I think a lot of people see this as their favorite, and I think I kind of agree. There's a lot going on. You know, it's got that alternative pumpkin jack-o'-lantern head there, and you got the hood and the Grim Reaper style, all the sort of spell casting kind of stylistic things going on. You got this belt with the scrolls and whatnot. The cloth work is not very impressive, you know. It could be better. I would love to see some wired capes and things, but you know, it fits him fine. It's just not the most advanced level of soft goods that I've seen out there. As far as the details go, the skeleton itself does not have a ton of detail. It's sort of just painted in this one solid blue color. There's not a ton of intricate little sculpted details, but when you get into the accessories and the dressing on this figure, like this hood, this collar piece, like the plastic sculpted pieces, like there is a ton of paintwork and fine craftsmanship in these plastic parts. So even though the figure itself doesn't have a ton of detail, there is a lot of detail in the rest of the kit. I do have one bit of paint issue right here, believe it or not. Even though it's a solid blue, there's like some paint missing, or it's like flaking off on the knee right there. But otherwise, it's very, very simple skeleton underneath there. And I will take all the stuff off so that you can see the whole thing bare later on, assuming I don't break mine like the last one. I'm still convinced that that was just me being an idiot and not a product quality issue necessarily, aside from the fact that by nature, a very thin skeleton is going to have very thin joints, and it's just going to be something that's a little more fragile than your average figure. And here's a nice zoomed out shot of the Grim Spectre so you can see a look at the overall figure, which stands just under 6.5 inches tall. And to see how it is with a few other figures, first up we got a couple boss fight characters. On the left is the Gladiator from the same Epic H.A.C.K.S wave, so another 6-inch scale skeleton. And then on the right is a 1/18 scale Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S skeleton. That one's custom painted, but that is your standard skeleton body for the Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S. A couple other Vitruvian H.A.C.K.S. On the left is the female Knight of Asperity, and on the right is the new Barbarian Sigurd. And I think sort of like if you read the bios on these Epic H.A.C.K.S skeletons, they're kind of supposed to exist in the same world as like giant skeletons as the 1/18 scale figures. Next up, we have some Mythic Legions skeletons, and as you can see, they are a little bit bigger. The 1.0 skeleton is definitely a lot bigger. The 2.0 skeletons are pretty close in size, even if they are a little bulkier than the Epic H.A.C.K.S. Next up, we've got skeletons from other lines. On the left is the Kulu World skeleton. On the right is the Storm Collectibles skeleton. And as far as other sword and sorcery lines go, I think these Mezco Frazetta figures fit in really well with the scale of these Epic H.A.C.K.S skeletons. And finally, a couple other lines, a Marvel Legends figure and an Animal Warriors of the Kingdom. These are a little bit bigger, but again, skeletons should naturally be a little smaller, so I feel like they do kind of fit in with a lot of different lines in terms of the scale. For accessories, this figure does not disappoint. There's a lot of cool stuff that it comes with, this piece being one of them. Over the top of the head, removable. You could probably try this out with some other lines and other figures and such, but really cool piece right there. And then this piece here is also removable, and it's got a lot of nice little details, and together they pair up nicely. They fit together really well. Then we have the alternate head sculpt, which does have a little sloppy paint in there, but still a really nice piece. For a weapon, it has the Reaper's Scythe, which I think the paintwork could be better. There's really nothing going on the staff. I like the sculpt work on it, but there's no wash or anything. And then you have some blood splatter on the blade. So it's an okay piece. I like the shape of it, but better paintwork would have been nice, especially when you look at the details on this thing. And speaking of amazing details, check out this book. So this is a solid piece. It's an open book. And then it has like a bookmark with a peg and a fire piece so that he's like casting spells. The only thing is, like, it would have been nice if there was some kind of writing, I guess, on here. And I also have like some issues because the tape that was on there like got stuck to it. I want to kind of scrape it off, but I don't want to scrape the paint off. But those edges of the pages are nicely detailed, and I love this piece. I think this is fantastic. And then to have this fire, which you could, peg onto the book, or he could just like be holding it in his hand. One of my favorite things about those 1/18 scale Vitruvian hacks have always been these cool effects, especially these fire flame effects. For extra hands, he does come with a pair of pointing fingers that could also grip onto things as well. So you've got sort of Grim Reaper pointing fingers, and then he's got a pair of open, relaxed hands. This is the hand you would use to hold the book. So the book doesn't peg into the hand or anything. You just have to pose it right and just get the book sitting in the hand, which can be a little unstable. Would have been cool if they had a hand with a peg and a little peg hole here, but that also would have broken up the nice, beautiful sculpt on the back here. And again, kind of just reminder of what could have been with this piece. And then it also does come with this stand, which is a peg stand. It has 4 pegs on there. And if you've ever wondered, HA.C.K.S stands for Highly Articulated Character Kit System. And before I get into the articulation, while I have the figure stripped down, I thought I would just do one more comparison so you can see the shape of this skeleton compared to some other bear skeletons. Okay, for articulation, the head is on a ball joint, and it's got a decent range of motion. It can look up a little bit and down a little bit. It's got an articulated jaw, and you can see there's some nice details. I don't know if I mentioned it, but the teeth have a little paint on there, and the eyes, of course, are painted. So there is a little subtle detailing going on some of the parts of the bear skeleton. Otherwise, it's pretty basic. Here's a look at the back. There's no articulation point throughout the spine from the top of the neck down to the mid-torso. But up in that mid-torso, there is a ball joint. There's not a lot of movement. You can definitely twist it, but this is the point where you're going to want to pop the figure apart. So if you pull the figure apart at that point, there's not much danger in anything breaking because everything's nice and thick. But if you try to pop it down here, there is an interesting little like split ball joint down there. And so the attachment point is very thin because it's one of those like the hinge on the wrist. It's a similar piece down in here, if you can see it. And there's just that danger of it breaking. And then if you look closely, you can see that there's a little hinge side to side. It can be tricky to get that hinge forward so that he can crunch forward and back. But once you do, he can go forward this much and then back up to a straight up pose. So he can't arch back really, but he can hunch forward a little bit. The shoulder is on a hinge and swivel, and the only limitation is that this shoulder blade can kind of like prevent it from going all the way around, but you go one way or the other, and it's got quite a lot of range there. And the joints all feel pretty stiff on this, like they feel right. They don't feel too tight or too loose or anything like that. Obviously, with such a thin figure, it can be challenging to get it to stand up because it doesn't have a great, it doesn't have a low center of gravity. But I haven't had any issues of it feeling floppy or anything like that. Single jointed elbow with a twist and comes up to about 90 degrees. I feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job of getting that arm a little more range, and that arm would have been nice. Split hinge on the wrist, so you can pretty much move it however way you want. There's a little bit of drop down in the hips right here, and then there's a split ball with a swivel right here. So pretty much tons of range in those hips, a lot of good movement in those hips. He does have a double jointed knee with full range, no twist at all. And then you have an ankle rocker that can point up and down, and just ton of range down in those legs. For me, it would have been nice to have a little more range in the torso, but the legs have a ton of articulation, and the arms are fine. A little more range in the elbows would have been nice. Overall, decent articulation and a pretty nice skeleton. All right, and finally, somebody had asked if I could do some swaps, and here is a look at the Grim Spectre with the Barbarian's boots and harness. And that was specifically the thing they had asked, and I can't remember who it was, but they said, can you put the boots from the Barbarian on the Grim Spectre? And there's a look at that figure with that setup. And I also put this on here. I don't think I love this being on the chest piece from the Barbarian, but overall there's definitely some popping and swapping options in this line. Anyway, thanks for watching my video, and until next time, may the force be with you.